When you wish upon a star, makes no difference who you are. Anything your heart desires will come to you. Eh? Can you take a guess on what we're talking about this time? Hello and welcome back to another exciting episode of Disney Anime Remake. I am your lovely host, Miss Disney. Long story short, I did watch the... Yes, we are going to be talking about... I've got no strings to hold me down, to make me fret or to make me frown. Yep, Pinocchio. Because as you know, back in September... Well, 2 days ago, September 8th, Pinocchio, the live action that stars Tom Hanks, came out on Disney Plus. I'm gonna be honest with you guys, I kind of watched it maybe 4 o'clock that morning, so yeah, my Thursdays were kind of like a caffeine day. I had to drink all kinds of sodas to keep me awake in order to do my job, so it was like, whoo. And even Mr. Disney was pretty surprised because normally he knows I'm not a morning person at all. Even getting Prince Disney up has been challenging, or at least Prince Disney would wake me up, but I would be like, I don't want to wake up, but gotta do what you gotta do. But yes, we are gonna be talking about the Pinocchio live action movie along with the 1940 Pinocchio. I know this is probably backwards, but who cares? You can see the picture. Oh my gosh, I have to... Sorry guys, if you notice I'm going in and out, that's because Quinn is trying to grab my attention. Lovely cat he is, but ever since I've had Prince Disney, he's been like, pay attention to me, pay attention to me. If many of you have families and you've got pets that are like that, thank goodness I'm not alone on that department. Anyway, oh my god, wow. The Pinocchio live action. I'm gonna be brutally honest with you guys, and if you remember my friend Vicky, who's been co-starring with me at least 2 episodes, growing up, the 1940 Pinocchio did scare me because, let's face it, if you've seen the animated Pinocchio, you know that it involves a boy turning into a donkey. You got like a scary coachman that kind of turned red-faced and devil-eyed. You got these angry henchmen, and it was so fun. And of course, the giant Monstro whale. Oh my god. Growing up, that was probably the scariest movie I have ever watched. But you have to remember, I was a kid when I first saw it. It is a lot different now when I'm an adult. And I guess now as an adult, I can see what message they're kind of doing. Because you guys have to remember, a lot of these old Disney movies, and I guess some of them to this point, they're trying to teach us a lesson. And in this case, if you don't know what Pinocchio is, then shame on you. Pinocchio is about a little wooden puppet made of pine, hence the name Pinocchio, and he is turned into a real boy, but he's not a full real boy. He still is pretty wooden, pretty flexible as any wooden boy would be. But the Blue Fairy has actually approached him and told him that in order to be a real boy, he needs to be... Oh, come on. Come on, Miss Disney. Prove yourself true, brave, truthful, and unselfish. There we go. See? You guys gotta be patient with me. I do know my Disney facts, but mommy brain is still kind of like in the present. So, Pinocchio is met up with Jiminy Cricket, who comes in as like his conscience. Now, if you don't know what a conscience is at this point, a conscience is basically that little voice inside your head that tells you between right and wrong. And it is up to you as a person to listen to your conscience on knowing what the difference is and to figure out what is right for you. And in Pinocchio's case, because he's a wooden puppet, he didn't really have his own sort of guidance. So Jiminy Cricket comes along, and he actually guides Pinocchio to his path of being being a real boy. Now, you gotta remember, it's not always an easy job knowing the difference between right and wrong. There are things such as temptation. And that's what I love about this movie, is because they actually have 3 different types of temptations. You got the one where you got, I can never know the fox's name. I do not think they actually mentioned the fox's name at all. But you got the fox and the cat, and they're trying to trick Pinocchio to be an actor in theater. But in reality, they're only doing it just to get money. And let's face it, there are a lot of people out in the world that will do that. They will say all these things to try to get you into doing stuff that is wrong, but they do it just for the sake of money. And that's what, I know the cat's name is Gideon. I know that because the fox kept saying, isn't that right, Gideon? Ah, 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 ah. You know, the fox that sings, hi, diddly dee, an actor's life for me. Oh my gosh, that was such a catchy tune. I was so glad that the live action did that song too. I was really, really happy about that. Yes, so that is one temptation of trying to get Pinocchio to not go to school and being an actor. What I love about the live action one is we actually get to see Pinocchio going to school, but then 30 seconds later he got kicked out. And I love the fact that they actually explain why he was kicked out. Because he was a wooden puppet. He wasn't a real boy. And the teacher, being the teacher, says, puppets don't belong in school. They belong in the theater, in the puppet show. Hence the fox and cat coming right in to be like, see, you don't belong in school. You belong to be an actor. Join the puppet show. Hey! And then, of course, Pinocchio went to the puppet show and becomes a huge hit because, let's face it, he is a puppet with no strings. How often do you see that? Okay, yeah, shadow puppets, yeah, and maybe those finger puppets. But still, marionettes. When you see those marionettes with the strings and the puppets, yeah. So, and what I honestly, I love that they added a new character to it, and maybe I like to think as a love interest of Pinocchio, even though he's supposed to be a boy, where they introduce, I want to say that her name is Fantina, but I could be wrong. You gotta remember, Pinocchio takes place in an Italian village, so it's a possibility that we're dealing with Romanians or maybe even Italians that are gypsies that travel from place to place. Now, gypsies, not bad people, but in Pinocchio's case, they made these types of gypsies to be the bad guys, where they seem all nice and loving, and they are caring, and they want you to push you to be the best that they can. But we see Stromboni, the gypsy puppeteer master, we can call him, as the bad guy, because all he cares about is the money. All he cares about is like being the star and getting his way. And if you don't get his way, then you're out of the show and you turn into firewood. Whew, that is second temptation. I like to think that is second temptation, is knowing how to say no to situations like that, especially if you're not understanding that when someone sold you to be a performer, you don't have the option to go home. That's what the 1940s showed, and it looks like of course it looks like the live action one showed that too, especially after it seems like Stromboni wanted to keep Pinocchio to himself and not have him interact with anybody else, including the ballerina puppeteer or puppet. So yeah, that would be the second temptation. And of course, the scariest part of all, the Coachman. And here's an interesting fact, ladies and gentlemen. Did you know that Pinocchio was actually the first of many other Disney films to feature more than one bad guy in their movie. The latest one would be Moana, because you got Te Fiti and you got um, t- the creatures from deep in the sea and Tamatoa. So you got multiple bad guys in one movie of Moana. In this case, Pinocchio had the fox and the kitty, Gideon. You got Stramboni, the puppeteer, gypsy guy, and of course you got the Coachman. The Coachman, I think, is the scariest villain of the entire movie, from not just in the 1940s, but also in the new movie, because he is basically snatching little children who are past their curfew. They don't give a hoot, and he takes them to an island called Pleasure Island, and he lets them go run amok. They get to do whatever they want. They get to drink beer, they get to smoke cigarettes, they get to break glasses, they get to rough out some houses, they get to beat each other up. No consequences whatsoever. The Coachman basically tells Pinocchio and these kids, do whatever you want. There are no rules. There are no consequences. Just do whatever makes your heart happy. Sounds like a dream come true, doesn't it? You'd be wrong. Yes, it's nice to do whatever you want without having to think about the consequences, but in reality, and I should have mentioned this, fair warning, there will be some foul words, but this is not really a foul language, because this word means something different, and I'm going to explain that to you. Basically, what these kids were doing are making asses of themselves. And so, the consequence of being asses is to turn into a ass, or in this case, a donkey. And yes, it is okay to actually say jackass or ass in this point, and not because of the TV show Jackass. Johnny Knoxville, you are awesome. You are very funny. You are amazing in your own stunts. But in this case, jackass does not mean whatever Johnny Knox is doing on his show. This jackass means donkey. Yes, you heard me correctly. The Coachman is literally somehow taking all these kids, letting do whatever they want, and turn them into donkeys. Oh my god, this was the scariest part, because one of the boys, gosh, I cannot remember his name. It's a difficult name too, but he hangs around with Pinocchio, and the scariest part was when he was drinking beer and playing pools and basically smoking a cigar. He eventually realized, and he even said that he doesn't care about the consequences. He wants to do whatever he wants, and it turned him into an ass. It turned him into a donkey. It was, the way that they transformed him too was so scary, because his hands were turning into hooves. He was gaining those ears and a tail. And apparently, once you're a donkey, you don't revert back into human. And I find that very scary, because, and the Coachman took this action and used it for his own purpose, and actually sold these kids to either salt mines or circuses or wherever it is people need donkeys. And here's the best part. The parents are well, not the best part, but at this rate, parents are realizing the kids are gone, but they don't realize that they aren't missing, they're just transformed. I don't know about you, but it definitely gave me an impression that it's not always a good idea to do whatever you want, because let's face it, there are consequences to whatever you're doing, and if you just don't care about those consequences at all, well, you're just making an ass of yourself. Plain and simple. And this is what I love about both remakes. They actually took that impression and turned it into something bad. Like, they gave it a full vision of what becomes of you. And I'm going to be honest, it did shape me to be who I am now, to where if there's certain things that I do, my conscience is telling me that it's wrong. I do tend to listen to it from time to time, but I'm like Pinocchio. Sometimes I do the wrong things, but that's what I love about Pinocchio, is that even when he does the wrong thing, he knows that it's wrong. And I think that's why Pinocchio never fully turned into a donkey. He just gained the ears and the tail, because he knows somewhere deep inside his wooden body this wasn't right. And that's one of the things I love about the live action one. Let's compare. 1940 Pinocchio, he just went along with everything. He didn't question anything. He just went along for the ride and then learned later that this was wrong. This Pinocchio, the 2022 Pinocchio, we saw hesitations. We saw him stopping for a bit, really thinking about it before he actually went along for the ride. And even when he went to Pleasure Island after the Coachman took him there with all the kids, he did not like the experience. He did not like how the kids were breaking things, drinking root beer, doing whatever they want. He especially did not like the part of the kids breaking clocks, because he loves his papa. He loves the fact that his papa was all about making clocks, and it reminded him of his papa, of what his papa wanted and what and the expectations. So yes, he still went along for a ride, but he never fully enjoyed it, and I think that's why they made him only half a donkey, with just the ears and the tail. But another reason why I like the 2022 is because, again, like all the other remakes in the past, we actually have a background to some of these characters, like Geppetto. Have you ever wondered why he decided to make a puppet that looked pretty much like a real boy? Well, there's a backstory to it, and it's not a happy one, but I guess in some ways it's kind of a coping method. I always get the impression that Geppetto was not much of a talkative person. Like, he doesn't like to be around people. He preferred to be with Cleo, his fish, and Figaro, his kitty. But now I know that he was mourning. In 2022 movie, there is a picture frame of a little boy. And there's a song that Tom Hanks sings, well, sort of sings, when he was there. I got the impression from the song that he lost his little boy. And then later, when a customer showed up in the shop who wanted to buy clocks, Geppetto refused. And he said she loved those clocks more than anything. Oh my God. Why didn't it sink in with me the first time I watched the original? Geppetto was mourning. He lost his wife and he's lost his kids somehow. So of course he would make a puppet very realistic, like a boy, and of course he wouldn't sell his clocks because it reminded him of his family that he lost. To what? I'm not sure. At this rate, it probably would be the plague or maybe pneumonia that wasn't really discovered as pneumonia. Who knows? And that probably made him why he was so worried about Pinocchio when he didn't come home on time. Because he was concerned that something happened to him. So maybe something happened to his wife and son. And I love how, yes, Geppetto made a wish that Pinocchio would turn into a real boy. And I love the fact that instead of the Blue Fairy coming in to literally grant that wish, we actually have a reason of how that is possible. It started off with the Blue Fairy wanting to bring the picture of his son to life. But instead, after, I think maybe the power was too much and the frame kind of shifted to where it bounced off the picture frame into the Pinocchio, the puppet itself. And hence why Pinocchio came to be who he is. And even the Blue Fairy seemed confused, like, Oh, hold on. Who are you? Who are you? I'm asking you. Who are you? I'm asking you. Who are you? Yeah. Oh, that was pretty funny. I mean, let's face it. He is a wooden puppet. He wouldn't have like a mind of his own. He's just copying what he hears. So, whew. So, I love that. I love that bit. I love how there's backstory to this. I love how what started off with turning Pinocchio into a real boy was really an accident, or at least probably something that wasn't meant to happen. I think the idea was to take the image of the boy and actually make a boy, but instead it bounced off into the nearest thing, which is a wooden puppet, Pinocchio. And I love how a lot of these. Okay, well, let me back up. Many of you guys know there's an actual book called Pinocchio, right? It was written by an Italian author, and I'm gonna be honest with you, the book, a whole lot darker than the movies, both sets of movies. It is a whole lot darker, a whole lot meaner. Basically, the temptations that Pinocchio meets are crueler than Disney made them out to be. Like, there's actually hanging involved. The fox and the cat actually hung Pinocchio, and let's face it, he was a wooden puppet. He didn't have lungs. He turned out okay, and he just got himself down and moved on to the next temptation. It was a whole lot darker. I never read the book, but this is based off of some abstract that I read online, because let's face it, I am a Disney person. I have to do my facts to see where the inspirations came from. And I love that the Coachman actually did have a larger role in his part than just collecting the kids and just be on the... Because in the 1940, the fox actually talked to the Coachman and made an arrangement to snatch some boys and trick them to go onto the carriage to go to Pleasure Island. And that's what the fox did with Pinocchio. He gave him a little card that has an ace on it. Let it be his ticket to get to Pleasure Island. Where in this case, Pinocchio was on his way home to get to Geppetto, where he was swooped up by the Coachman and taken to Pleasure Island. And honestly, I think this is good because let's face it, a lot of these villains actually do need some singing characters because it just makes it even more vile, even more sinister. It makes you want to hate them even more, despite the song being awesome. It gives you an idea and a hint of what kind of characters they are. And of course, they added Luke Evans, which, as you know, was Gaston in the live-action Beauty and the Beast. So that made it awesome that they made a Coachman, Luke Evans, and that he was given a singing part. I don't remember the whole song, but I do remember the "So play, play, time to play, take your worries, drift away," or something like that. But it gave me the exact impression of what the 1940 Coachman was like, where he is tricking these kids to have the time of their life, let them run amok, and have the best year of their life, and then and it shows that there's a hidden agenda. And even on that boat ride on Pleasure Island, you can see that sinister smile as he fades down. And of course, what was the spooky part was, remember in 1940, there were men wearing black hoods and pretty much covered their entire bodies in black leather hood-like suits. In this case, the Coachman was associated with black smog henchmen, which I guess in some cases serve as the evil spirits of Pleasure Island that takes all the kids that were turned to donkeys and they just basically ship them up to salt mines, circuses, or wherever it is the Coachman is taking them. Whew. Oh, and I almost forgot the fourth villain, the creepiest one of all. Monstro. Ooh. Which Monstro do I like, you're probably wondering? It's not the whale. It's the sea monster. They actually turned Monstro, instead of just a giant, whatever kind of whale he was, to an actual sea monster. And Jiminy Cricket even described him as a monster that looks like an island when when Monstro surfaced on the land. But after watching the movie, you would see tentacles, you see that he would have the body of the whale, but he had all kinds of other sea creature stuff. He had tentacles like a squid. He had a little bit of a hunch that kind of looks like an island once it reaches the surface. So it definitely gave me the impression that I loved this Monstro, because I do see Monstro as a sea monster more than a whale. Oh, and speaking of Monstro, the part where it led up to Monstro's appearance, where Pinocchio found Geppetto while Geppetto was out at sea. I love that bit to where Pinocchio was explaining everything that happened, and then Geppetto's response was, "You did all that in one day?" Uh-huh. Honestly, that made quite more of a good timeline than the 1940. I always had the impression that the original animated Pinocchio was like maybe a day or two, but then the mysterious thing happened was that the clocks were gone, and there was like, when you see an abandoned house, you see cobwebs and dust and all that. That's what I saw in 1940. And I'm pretty sure after cleaning up my house that lint and dust and cobwebs don't just happen in one day. They kind of happen in more than one day. So in this case, in the 2022 live action, they didn't bring the cobwebs, they didn't bring the dust, they just saw that the clocks were gone, and Sophia, the new character, which is the seagull, explained that Geppetto sold all of his clocks and all of his stuff to buy a boat to find Pinocchio on Pleasure Island. So, yay, we actually got details. We got to see more of Geppetto interacting to try to find Pinocchio. It wasn't just about Pinocchio's adventure, it was also about Geppetto's adventure on finding each other. And oh my gosh, that ending. Honestly, I like the new ending better, where in the original ending, after Pinocchio drowned and was knocked unconscious or possibly dead, it wasn't really determined. I would assume not unconscious, since, let's face it, wooden puppets wouldn't have lungs to breathe and whatnot, so he was probably just knocked out. And then the blue fairy granted the wish to let him be a real boy, just boom, right there. In the live action, oh my god, he wasn't turned into a real boy. And that actually meant something greater. Pinocchio was a real boy all along, because it was showed during the entire movie was that Pinocchio showed bravery. He was brave enough to conquer all of these adventures, including the part where he got locked up, and of course truthful. Let's face it, when he was trapped by Stromboni, he did tell a lie, but what I love most about this live action was that he, after realizing his nose grows when he lies, he continued to lie. But it's for a good cause. He was trying to get the key with Jiminy on his nose. And then, of course, once he got the key, he started telling the truth, and his nose shrinks. The blue fairy didn't actually save him this time. He spoke the truth, and the nose grew shorter back to normal. That is true fairy magic right there. That is what Pinocchio represents, is realizing the difference between right and wrong and lying and truth. And when you lie, your nose grows so much, and when you tell the truth, it'll return back to normal. I love seeing that bit. I love seeing how I just love everything about this live action movie, because I actually saw more than just the blue fairy coming in saving his life. I love the fact that Pinocchio learns. he learns and he uses his learning to get himself out of that situation. Like he purposely lied to get the key to get out. And then, of course, he used his smarts to realize that something was not right on Pleasure Island, and he didn't fully enjoy himself to turn into a real donkey. Now, what I love best about this is that after he escaped Pleasure Island, he realized that despite wanting to travel and do the things that seems exciting, he realized his true purpose, and that is to find his father and be with him. And because he realized that, the donkey ears and tail disappeared, and he turned back into the puppet boy. Whew! Why was this not shown in the 1940s? That is what showing the fairy magic works, and that's what I love about this is because we actually get to see Pinocchio learning. Each of these temptations was all about the bravery, being truthful, and unselfish. Yes, there were a few moments where Pinocchio was being selfish, but he learned not to be selfish all the time. He took that selfishness and he flip-flopped it and started thinking about his father and what he thinks is the right thing to do to get to his father. And that has led to the unselfishness part. And that's what I love about the ending is that we don't see Pinocchio turn into a boy right away as soon as he has learned all of these traits on being a real boy. And even Geppetto realizes that even though he may not look like a real boy, he is on the inside. When you show bravery, truth, and unselfishness, you're a real person. Not that you weren't a real person before, but you start seeing a good value inside of yourself. You're not just a block of wood or a jackass. You are you. A person who cares about others, who thinks about what is right, and just knowing. And that's why I think that maybe the live action is a lot better than the 1940. No disrespect to the 1940s whatsoever. It's still an amazing classic movie, but let's face it, I think 2002 may have won on this one because they did a phenomenal job. They showed Geppetto's backstory. We get to see Pinocchio become a real boy on the inside more than on the outside, but I'll give you a little special spoiler. He does turn into a real boy. It's just not right away because that's not the whole point of this story. And I think the writers are right. I do see this as maybe finding a special sequel, or even, I don't know so much about a sequel, but I definitely see some more to the story. Like maybe we get to see what Pinocchio's life is like after he turns into a real boy. Who knows? But it was such an awesome movie. I kept on watching it over and over. I even tried to get Prince Disney to watch it. I think he may be a little too young for it just yet. I think once he gets a little bit older, I'll start introducing it to him, especially around the donkey parts and the Monstro parts. And yeah. But that's what I love most about these remakes. You get the backstories that you're always questioning. Why did Geppetto turn a puppet into a real boy? Or why did he want a puppet into a real boy? You think he would be crazy? No, not crazy. And I think Jiminy Cricket knew that. But then again, he probably wasn't there when he realized that Geppetto probably lost his wife and son. But yeah. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you are curious to see Pinocchio, I suggest you take this opportunity, go on to Disney Plus and watch both versions of Pinocchio to see for yourself exactly what it is I'm talking about. If you love this episode and would love to see more, click the like button and hit subscribe on the bottom, and I will tune in next time because, boys and girls, yesterday was the D23 Expo. a lot of things are coming out, and I just saw the teaser of Little Mermaid, and whoo, I am dying to see what that movie is all about. So, and that gives you a little hint, ladies and gentlemen, that the next episode could be The Little Mermaid. So until next time, be brave, be truthful, and unselfish. May your dreams